So this is it, man. This is a StreamYard. We're in the studio right now. Steven is in head office, just controlling everything. If I needed, I already noticed that he pressed the recording button. You can tell on the top, my top left, how long we've been going for. And then once this finishes up, that's it. We get the recording right away, and then we can put this up and figure out all the next steps after that. But you can see that we can start to kind of we can really design this any which way we want to. We can fuck around and do this. I personally myself like this layout that we're in right now in a full split screen, because I think the other shit is nice. But when you're watching on a TV, like a lot of people do, right? They go on YouTube on their TV. This just looks better. It looks like it's just a little bit more intimate kind of thing, right? That's my thoughts. But in terms of the podcast, man, we're going to go for about 20, 25 minutes and just shoot the shit on mortgages. You good with that?
Cool. Yeah.
All right, cool. I'm going to get started right now. Very excited to be with Mr. Jacob Perez here. Good-looking guy. Don't let his good looks fool you. I mean, him and his team do hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars of mortgages for their clients as well as for themselves. And that's what I really wanted to kind of get out of him today and really pull that information and experience out of, because I know as a lot of you are listening right now, taking your dog for a walk, driving, or maybe working out. A lot of my clients have 6 doors, 14 doors, 57 doors. And the question that I probably get the most is how do I keep increasing my portfolio? How do I actually get around all the obstacles? Is it going to the red bank, blue bank, green bank? And if you've been listening to me long enough, you know I'm not a big proponent of those banks, not because they're banks by any means, but look, we all know that any one of those banks it's not a nonprofit organization. And so if you do look at their quarterly reports, you see that they're making billions upon, if not trillions of dollars. It's because they're for profit. So the red bank's not going to tell you about the green bank. Insert someone like Jacob and his team, because that's when you can actually rely on all the legwork and the experience of an independent mortgage broker. Jacob, brother, A, how is life treating you? What's been going on? And then B, why don't you just tell my guys and gals a little bit about how you kind of got into mortgages? Give them the comic book story on how everything started for you, my man.
Yeah, thanks for that good intro, and thanks for having me on the show. When it comes to mortgages and real estate investing, everybody gets into this real estate career a little bit differently. Normally, when people become mortgage agents, they started out at one of the major banks in like a financial advisor role, or maybe they worked as an underwriter for a mortgage agent where they're processing the files, but maybe not doing as much of the marketing. For me, it was very different. I had a career in the tech world. I had a master's in data analytics, and I was bouncing around between, sales jobs, trying to do some consulting roles. And I always invested.
And hang on, sorry, 1 second. I was going to let you go for a second, but I got to do what I do sometimes. Yeah. I do cut people off, so I do apologize for that. But did you say you had a master in data analytics, man? That sounds pretty intense.
Yeah, so it's pretty math focused, and I was like, you know what? I would think when I got into it, I thought I wanted to be a general manager in the NHL. I was like, how can I get in the door without being a former player?
A little Kyle Dubas action, eh? Like with all that the data and stuff. I like that.
Yeah, and know what? It's a good program for anybody because it teaches your brain how to sequence things properly, and I think that's how it allows us to streamline our process with clients a lot better as well. But I was in that industry, and I'd bought a few rental properties on the side, and kind of decided that whatever job I went with, I didn't want that job to take away from my real estate investing. So I didn't want to do a consulting job where I was working 80 hours a week or something like that. I wanted something that would keep my availability there to invest in real estate. And I remember I got a really great opportunity to get this sales job, and I did 8 interviews for this position. And at the end of 8 interviews, I didn't get the job. And that was my moment when I said, I'm done with the corporate world. And I decided I'm either going to be a real estate agent or I'm going to be a mortgage broker, something that aligns with real estate investing. And I chose mortgage broker simply just because I had way more questions. How do I get more mortgages? How can I qualify for more? What different loan options actually exist out there? So I jumped into the industry in about 2018, and 4 years later, haven't really thought twice about my career or anything like that.
So a couple of things I just want to unpack before we kind of get into the meat of our conversation today, which is really like how are you helping people increase their doors and their portfolios through creative financing and all that. But the couple of things that I want to unpack. Number one, you did invest into real estate before making the switch as a broker, right? I just want to make sure I heard
Yeah.
that properly. And then, so what was that property, and what the heck made you invest in real estate? Like, is that a family thing? Like, where did that come about? Like, buddies doing it? How did that start for you?
To be honest, I just heard the concept randomly in high school. So when I was in high school, I heard you can put a down payment on a property, put a tenant in the property, they're going to pay your mortgage down. I don't remember where I heard this. And at the end of 25 years, you will have this asset paid off that's worth 150,000. Those were the numbers at the time, right? And I remember thinking, wow, that seems like the easiest thing ever. Why isn't everybody doing that? And it was always in my head. So when I graduated university, my goal was to buy an income property. And when I was 22 years old, I decided that I want something that has a heavy cash flow position. I want to make a lot of money every month. And I started going to see multiplexes in Hamilton. So I got approved for a mortgage at, a major bank, and started walking through all these multi-unit properties in Hamilton in 2012 or 2013. And I was terrified. I was scared of the tenants. I had never seen anybody living like that. I had never seen properties in this rundown type of condition before. And I ended up actually just doing the opposite of my strategy. I bought a brand new shiny condo because it was less intimidating to me, kind of thing. So I remember I bought a condo, and when I went to TD Bank, they said, "Hey, we actually can't qualify you for this deal anymore because I just got a new job. That job paid me 50% more money. So I thought it was a no-brainer, but I was on a contract." So then I went to my brother, who is a financial advisor at CIBC. They couldn't approve me either. And somebody actually referred me to a mortgage broker, and that was my deal actually qualified. And that was my introduction to the mortgage experience. So I bought a condo. It was probably losing like $75 every month. The realtor told me it would rent for a certain price, didn't quite rent for that much. And that was okay because I live with my parents and things like that, and I can afford it. And that's kind of how I got into the real estate investment.
It's so important what you said there, right? Because I sit down with a lot of investors and they lose their lid when I tell them about call it $100 for argument's sake that they're going to be paying, but then that same night they go to Jack Astor's and spend $250 on some wings and some tequila, and it's like, that was okay. Now, I'm not here to tell you that you shouldn't be buying tequila and some wings, but understand that, like what Jacob mentioned there, I mean, the $75, the $100 a month, it's $1,200 at the end of the year. But if your property's increasing in value by 25, $30,000 on the low end, let's just say, use a round number like 5% on $500,000, that's $25,000 a year. You're probably paying your mortgage down by about $10,000 a year. So you're making $35,000 into your left pocket, and then you have $1,300, $1,200 a month leaving your right pocket. I mean, I'm not, I just barely passed high school, but I can do some simple math. It's not a bad investment. I'm sure you hear that a lot. Like, Jacob, like, I'm an investor first and foremost. So for me, I do want to have minimum neutral cash flow. And man, like, if I get $500 a month, $700 a month, that's awesome. But at the end of the day, do you hear that a lot as a broker as well? And what are you telling people, like, when they're freaking out that they might have to put in $50, $100 a month out of their pocket?
Well, I think our conversations are a lot different on the broker and mortgage broker side because we're projecting, how do you scale this, right? And losing $100 or $200 a month might not be a big deal in terms of an inflow outflow. And, you're probably very profitable still overall when looking at all the different drips within the investment. But if you want to scale to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 properties, those large cash flow positions are actually very important, and that's what's going to help you qualify. So a lot of times with our clients, and this is the difference about, I think, being on the mortgage broker side, which I didn't think about, but I love compared to being on the real estate agent side, is we really can operate in any market. So we can kind of push our clients towards the markets where the properties might help them scale a little bit further, as opposed to, trying to find them the best option in whichever said market there is, kind of thing.
Okay, so now let's talk about somebody who's maybe starting their journey. I'm thinking about the gentleman who's probably listening to this recording, like literally listening to this recording right now. My one of my team members, and he's renting right now, but he wants to get his first income property. I actually tell people all the time, there's nothing wrong with renting where you actually live, as long as you take that money and invest it into a property. What are you telling this guy? He's 30 years old. He makes a salaried income. Like what's some stuff that he should prepare himself for in helping him getting financing when he comes and sits down with Jacob Perez?
I think the first thing you do is just book the phone conversation. You don't need to prepare. You don't need to wait till your 2021 T4 came in the mail. You don't need to wait to any of that stuff. I think have the dialogue first, and then we can strategize based on your current standing from there, type of thing. I think it all starts with, what do I qualify for right now?
Mm-hmm.
Then where does that allow me to actually purchase? Or is there something I can do on the back end to change that qualification? Maybe it's a strategic debt payout. Maybe it's you're looking at two different job opportunities and one of them skews you a little bit better towards qualification. Do you want to look at increasing your qualification, or do you want to look at working within that qualification and picking a market that fits better?
Now, are you in today, right now, time of this recording, start, February, March, whatever it is, 2022? Are more of your conversations being had with people trying to increase their qualification? I would think so, only because they're getting priced out of properties.
Yeah, I think that's always part of the conversation, right? So we have a few tactics that we use with people that helps them qualify for more. A lot of people are prioritizing trying to pay down their primary residences, as an example. We actually recommend the opposite. We say, you know what, drag your amortizations out to 30 years, keep your payment structure as low as possible. That's going to help you borrow as much money as possible. And that additional investment you're making is going to put you in a better cash flow net worth position that will help you pay down your mortgage faster than a bi-weekly payment schedule or a 20-year amortization or something like that.
So you are suggesting people to go with the 30 years, right? So because I've been doing that as well. I just want to make sure I'm on the right track because I like to think I'm the most important person in the process, but I know it really comes down to the mortgage brokers, because I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to be the one who's getting our clients the actual hard money for them to find something. So go still 30 years on amortization, and then variable or fixed. I know it's the old the old question that you probably don't get enough of these days, but I'm kidding. Variable or fixed?
Yeah, typically almost all our clients and all of us personally are taking variable rate mortgages. The payments are much lower. The flexibility is better. There's nothing worse than you're in a fixed rate mortgage and you have this abusive penalty of $10,000 or $15,000 in order to break that mortgage term and access equity, and you let a $10,000 or a $15,000 burn stop you from investing in something that you just mentioned might gain $25,000 of appreciation every year, might cash flow another $5,000 a year. You have a tenant paying down another $20,000 in principal every single year. So just what that does to people psychologically is much worse than the actual financial penalties that come with those fixed rates.
Okay, now I want to speak a little bit about people who are self-employed. What programs are out there? How do you navigate through them? Sometimes not necessarily showing all their income. Not that I'm saying I know anybody who does that, but I've heard about it through the grapevine that somebody who's self-employed might not show all their income. Like, how do you help somebody right now that is self-employed get mortgages? What's out there? What's some of and I'm taking your word, the tactics that you use, because I like that word.
Yeah, so we're self-employed as mortgage brokers, so we can relate a lot to these people in this situation, right? And sometimes it's just smart math to claim a very small amount in a dividend from your corporation, because there's different loan options that exist. There's what we call alternative lenders, and those lenders are willing to qualify you based on an income that's more based off of your bank statements than the revenue of the business, as opposed to what you claim as your net income to the government at the end of every single year. So it's a simple math equation. If I go with an alternative lender, maybe my interest rate is a full percent higher, maybe my payments are $300 to $400 more per month.
Now, really quickly, Jacob, one sec. When you say alternative lender, do you mean private lender, or is that not like when you actually use the word alternative? What is that different to like a bank?
Well, yeah. So good question. There's a lot of lingo that gets thrown around. Some people call alternative B lenders, right? So there's still a qualification process, right? Whereas on the A side, you might have interest rates between 1.5% to 2.5%. On the B side, you might have high twos to high threes kind of thing on interest rate. So it's not that big of a margin there. So the kind of how I was mentioning, you might have a mortgage on the alternative lending side who's willing to qualify you, where your payments are $400 more per month because the interest rates are higher. But if you're saving $30,000 a year on taxation because of the way you claimed your income, there's a clear benefit to doing it that way, type of thing. So alternative lenders, they are great options. Now there are some downsides with them. They're not as flexible on property condition because theoretically they're taking a bigger risk on the applicant. They want a really strong property. So if you're going to these smaller markets like Northern Ontario and things like that, they might want larger down payment positions in the major banks and things like that. But there's always a lending option out there for everyone. It's just knowing what it is, knowing what the terms are, and then building your investment strategy around that.
Now, somebody who has, let's just say 10 doors, okay? A lot of the banks, when I say 10 doors, let me take it to 10 properties for like 10 actual addresses, right? And they go into any one of those major banks, they're getting turned back and they're just not getting the mortgages. Tell me out of experience why that is for somebody who's listening or watching right now, and then go into how do you get around helping somebody like that, because that's probably, I'm gonna say, out of my 11,046 people that are in my community in terms of that gets my emails and stuff every single month, that I'm going to say 80% of them are in that boat. They're at that 10 property kind of number and they just can't get the financing anymore. So talk about how, like, why is the bank turning them back? And it might just be as simple as whatever the answer is. And then number two, how do you help someone in that situation?
Yeah, so there's a few things we have to kind of just bring to light on this topic, okay? So there is bank policy, right? And then there's people who sometimes at these institutions are willing to make exceptions outside of the policy. There's also people who are not willing to execute the actual policy. So for example, if you come into an institution, let's use, TD Bank, Scotiabank, whoever it is, and it might be that in branch, they're allowed to fund 15 properties in someone's name and things like that. But the problem is it's so much paperwork. The people who work there don't want to work on it and they'll actually push the file away. So half the battle is really having the correct contacts within these institutions, because you'll get different answers from the same institution based on who you're working with.
Okay. Yeah, that's so frustrating, right? Because you can go into a branch at corner of Highway 7 and Leslie, and then they say no, and then you go to a bank at the corner, same green bank, for example. And I always use the colors because none of them are sponsoring our show yet, and so they don't get the ability to get their names on it. But you can use whatever you like, brother. But then they can go to the corner of Don Mills and Lawrence, and they might do the mortgage for a different person. And then these two people talk at a cocktail party and they're like, what the heck are you talking about, buddy? I got the mortgage with them and I have 10 doors too, right? So it's just so frustrating. I'm so glad that you cleared that up, because just because the one branch, not even bank, the one branch says no, that doesn't mean that the other branch would say no as well, that there's still an opportunity, maybe them getting that mortgage.
100%. And a lot of times it can be frustrating. You can think that's the final answer and things like that, but it's also knowing, like, when there is a reason to push back on a file. You might have a strong overall borrower profile and they might be willing to make some moves for you. There's also different lending options. Can we take 4 or 5 properties, exit them into a commercial loan? Then when you're going to apply for things personally again on the residential side, you only have 4 or 5 properties in your portfolio.
Stop. I got to stop you there, Jacob, because what you just said just went over, half of it went over my head, let alone everybody who's listening right now. So let's pull it back for a second here. You said if somebody has 5 addresses, okay, 5 mortgages, I apologize, put it into a commercial loan. Unpack that, brother, because a lot of people are driving right now and probably swearing at the stereo because they don't understand what the heck you're talking about. So I really need you to take that slow. How does that all work? What does that all mean?
So there's 2 types of loans in general. One would be a residential mortgage, one would be a commercial mortgage. So with residential mortgages, the big thing that they're looking at is your personal income. What is this person's personal income monthly? What are all their personal liabilities monthly? Then there are commercial loans where they look at the financials of the actual building that's being financed. Now, you can get commercial loans on duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes. It's not conventional to do that, but these banks can do that. So this is another example of finding the people within the institutions who are willing to do this. You might have a commercial account manager at BMO or whichever institution, and they might have a goal to bring in $1 million deals, but they still can work on $400,000 mortgages and $300,000 mortgages. They just kind of need a reason to do so. So if you have a portfolio of property that has a strong cash flow position, where that strong cash flow position would actually qualify for a commercial mortgage, you could refinance them, move the mortgages to a commercial lending institution where it's not backed by your personal borrowing power. And then when you go apply for your next residential loan, you no longer have all these properties personally guaranteed in your name, and it doesn't impact your borrowing power.
Okay, perfect. Now continue with some other tactics in terms of actually increasing people's properties in their portfolio.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different things you can do. One, it's about, what properties are you targeting, right? We use this buzzword called zero impact properties. And what a zero impact property is a property that makes such a strong cash flow that it doesn't impact your borrowing power at all. So if your maximum purchase price is $800,000 and you buy a property that is a zero impact property, you could then go buy another property at $800,000 again, because there's such a strong cash flow position, it doesn't impact your borrowing power. So a lot of times knowing those metrics in advance will help investors pick and choose their investments in a way that allows them to scale. So we've had a lot of people who make $70,000 a year who have bought 8-9 properties because they've been following this model.
Now, could you help somebody refinance a property that they already own, take out the equity of that? And I know for you as an investor, that's quite basic. But again, man, I mean, some people who are listening have not, that 20-30% of people in my community have not pulled the trigger and done it like actually invested for the first time. But that's something that you can help with as well, like that whole process of pulling out equity out of property A, principal residence, or maybe an income property that they do happen to already have, and then taking that over to another property.
Absolutely. So using refinance funds or a home equity line of credit against your primary residence or a rental property is probably the most common approach to getting a down payment for a rental property. And even if you don't have interest in investing in real estate and you do have equity in your home, you should be getting at least a home equity line of credit. There's no payments associated with it unless you're currently borrowing it. And whether you're going to use it to buy cash flowing rental properties, or you're going to use it to invest in the stock market, or you're going to use it as a deposit on a new build that you may assign later. There's so many different uses for this cheap money that you can take advantage of, and it doesn't have to be rental property specific.
I actually have a question for you. Personally, and what you suggest, but I'm kind of curious what you do within your own portfolio. If you actually have a property, a second property in mind, or another property, income property in mind, do you do it as a HELOC or do you do it as a refi? Like what do you suggest to pull out the money through? Is it through a HELOC or a refi?
It depends, I think, on your strategy with that property. So for example, the last project I just did was, a BRRRR strategy project. So for the people listening who maybe don't know what a BRRRR is, it's buying a property with the purpose of renovating it and increasing the value so much that when you then refinance at its new valuation, you're able to pay yourself back for the construction costs as well as your original down payment. So when I do a BRRRR strategy, I'll probably take a down payment off a home equity line because I know that money is probably coming back within a 3-4 month window, and I'm able to pay it down. If I'm refinancing a property that's, a rental or something that I just completed a rental on, I might take a full cash out, right? It probably depends a little bit on your cash flow position in the property. If you have a large position, who cares? I'll just take all the money right now, kind of thing. If you're not sure how you're going to allocate in the future, a home equity line is a very non-threatening, low-pressure way to have access to equity in your property, but not have an immediate need to use it, kind of thing.
Now, I just saw a video of yours, and any of my guys right now, viewers, listeners, make sure to go check out my boy here on his Instagrams and his YouTube page, specifically his Instagram, because they're a little shorter form, so he gives you these nuggets pretty quickly. The one that really interested me was your tips for high income earners. Can you just elaborate a little bit more of that, man? Like, what is a high income earner? Like, is there a specific number that you kind of use? I can't remember what exactly number you used in that video. But what are some tips for guys and gals that are making, I guess, more than the average person, and how does that help them or not help them when it comes to getting mortgages?
Yeah, I talk to all different types of people because real estate investing is definitely something where everybody seems to have a bit of an interest in it nowadays. And, what I've noticed is this profile of client, which I call, a high income earner, someone who has their own business, somebody who has a 6-figure job, who's a consultant, who's, in IT, things like that. they typically are the slowest to take action. Whereas when I look at the young kid who's freshly graduated and begging mom and dad to help with the down payment, they seem to get into the rental properties a lot faster, kind of thing. And the reason that is because if you are a high income earner, you probably have a lot going on. Your business is probably your number one thing. Your career is probably your number one thing. And outside of that, you might have other responsibilities, kids, family, weekend commitments, things like that. So what I would recommend is if you are someone who has high income and has borrowing power, meaning you're able to qualify for mortgages, that is extremely valuable to people who are great at acquiring real estate. So for somebody like that, you might just be better off partnering up with somebody who can help you acquire the real estate, funding the deal through a down payment and your borrowing power, and taking an equity in the deal, as opposed to waiting 1 or 2 more years on the sidelines and not actually taking any action forward.
I love the JV route, right? Like I tell people all the time, for me to have 50% in a deal is better than having zero. Like and especially if someone, like in my situation, I am self-employed as well, and so I do have cash to use as a down payment, but sometimes I can't get mortgages. Obviously, I'm going to be speaking to you a lot more in terms of how you might be able to help my personal situation, but I'm always down to bringing in an equity partner who can get the financing. And sometimes I'm good as high as bringing them in at 50%. And sometimes if I have 57 people lined up to do it, I might not offer 50%, right? I think there's just so many people. Like, do you do JVs yourself, Jacob? Like
Yeah, so
what's
that
it?
was a big part of my strategy starting out in real estate investing, was bringing in the joint venture partners. And it's funny now, I actually sometimes act as the money partner. So depending on the deal, I actually think it's better to be the money partner sometimes than it is to be the managing partner. I'll give you an example. One of my clients came to me and he referred me somebody he was going to joint venture with, and that person could not qualify for the mortgage by any stretch, and he needed a joint venture partner. And I looked at the deal and said, "Oh, I'll fund this deal. This is going to be easy money, right?" So
Yeah.
the deal like that, we bought this fourplex in Niagara region. We renovated it. When we refinanced it, not only did we get our down payment back and our renovation costs back, we also got a check out for about 150,000. So some of those deals, I would way rather be on the sidelines and just collecting a check at the end than managing the eviction of these tenants, turning over units, doing all this kind of stuff. So there's no one way is not better than the other. Sometimes you're actually in a better position as the money partner. And the most important thing is just partnering up with somebody that you're okay with having a long-term relationship with, because it's not something that's easy to necessarily exit. So you just want to make sure you're with somebody you can trust.
Just on that point, like, is there one or two things that you're looking for? Maybe you're asking. Are you looking at maybe their experience with it? What does Jacob look for when it comes to a joint venture partner?
I think the most important thing in a joint venture partner is like, is this person reasonable? Things may happen in life. One person might be in financial distress. Are we both going to be reasonable with each other? And hey, we got to sell this property because my partner's in financial distress. I'm going to be okay with that, and vice versa, type of thing. I think the second thing is, if I had a perfect wish list, this is one thing that I thought of it that I've kind of transitioned towards. I never thought about in the beginning, is someone who's relatively close in age with me, so we can actually ride this property out longer time horizon. Because I have some money partners where, they're in their 50s, 60s, so they might want to exit sooner than I want to exit. And at some of these prices that things are trending towards right now, a buyout is maybe not that attractive as well, type thing, right? So
And you got to hold on to it a little bit longer, right? Like from a buy and hold perspective, where you can actually refinance in a couple of years. Where I love that. I never even really thought about that, right? Like when you have somebody who might be 65, 64, 63, they might be thinking about retiring, going to Florida, and like really living that Florida life where they just want to cash out quicker. A great point, man.
yeah, and then just obviously the borrowing power. That's the most important thing if you're bringing in a money partner, is, are they going to be able to borrow for 4 or 5 projects, or is it just one project? And it's easier to manage a relationship with one person than 5 different people, type thing. So if you could have that longevity, that's pretty good. But I think these partnerships are good. It's just another person to be on the ride with in life in this kind of business thing. And I appreciate the friendships I get out of them, to be honest.
100%. Brother, I want you to give a big shout out to your team, and everyone who probably helps you put all these mortgages together, because I know having a team without them, I wouldn't have the time to sit here and talk with you. I talk a little bit about your organization, and then B, tell my guys and gals where they can find you, where's best to find you.
Yeah, so my organization is called Synergy Mortgage Group. So we have two layers. We have the production team, that's us actually working on the mortgages for everybody, as well as a brokerage where we house about 15 agents right now, and that's growing pretty fast. With our production team, we have 6 full-time staff. 5 of the 6 own investment properties right now. So everybody who touches your file in some regard is actively investing in property, is
I
actively
love that.
renovating property, and we all kind of really live this culture. Our team has had a lot of experience. We processed a little over 1,000 files last year. So we definitely can't do that alone. And even with my client base, most of them just go directly to my staff, whether it's Austin, Kyle, Andrew, just because they've had such a good experience. They don't even need, they just bypass me and just get right to the action kind of thing. So you can find us on Instagram at Synergy Mortgages, and find me on Instagram at Jacob Perez 10, and send us DM. We would love to help out.
Huge congratulations to you and the team. I mean, I knew you guys were doing some big numbers. I didn't know exactly what those numbers are, and now you shared that. So big congratulations. And to my people who are listening, give these guys a call, give them a shot. I love what you said earlier on. You don't need to wait for your T4s and your T2100s and all the other Ts that CRA sends over to you in the mail in those brown envelopes. Give these guys a call and do that initial consultation, see if there's a fit there, and then kind of go from there. Jacob, my man, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.